Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Mardek, and we are going to head back down the final area, at least, of these side areas, in the Dark Temple here, so this bottom left one here. See what we find there. I would expect somewhat similar stuff to what we saw in the previous areas. Will it be pitch black? Will we be able to see? Well, we'll find out. Wouldn't have my hopes up at this point, but I do also think that it has been a little while since we last checked the status of our various skills, and we might find that maybe people have leveled up a little bit, or they might have mastered some things we didn't notice. So let's, after this battle, take a quick look at that stuff. See if there's anything we can switch around as we head on our way over to that other room. Okay, so if we do that for just a second here, and we see Slinik is looking fine here. He's actually more than halfway to finishing double gold, so at the time when we equipped this, it seemed like it was going to take an eternity for him to master it, but for the most part, we just threw it on there, and it's been working in the background, and hopefully he'll master that up soon. Magic defenses, he's fine for the time being. Same with physical defensive reactions. The offensive reactions, again, I think we were talking about how if he were to finish Degeneration, then we'd probably swap that back over to Core Human, and he's pretty close to doing that. That was another one that felt like it was going to take a really long time, but he's getting close. Charla, for you... Okay, here's an interesting example of what can happen once you start to build up a fair amount of those reactions, is what we could do is, since we have 2 RP to spare, we could get rid of minus 20% magic defensive reaction and add the minus 30. Which is obviously 10% better. And so then once we get 2 more RP, we could upgrade the minus 10% into the minus 20%, and so on and so forth. Also, Charlotte has yet to master the minus 30, so all the more reason for her to do that here. And she does also have enough RP to now do Bright Eyes. I think previously we might have been... I think we were throwing that on mostly for the item, because this was one of those Dark Resistance rings. So, I mean, if she can learn it now, then why not? Sure. Then, Donovan, you have a lot of room to learn more passive skills. If +1 strength and +1 agility are the primary things, beyond, of course, resist earth, then you need a lot more options here. So that's something to bear in mind, is maybe Donovan could use a lot more of the miscellaneous items. Seems to be, generally speaking, where you find a lot of those things. And this would be another instance where if we could track down what that item is that gives the minus 30% magic defensive reaction. I think it's the strong robe that we purchased in Cambria back in Chapter 2. And I think we only have one of them. And Donovan is currently using a robe to learn this reaction. Then we could do the same thing that we did for Charla. Get rid of the minus 20% and put the minus 30% in its place. That would be nice, but can't do that yet. Only a little bit on the physical defensive and magic offensive side of things. And then you have a little ways to go with the degeneration yourself, Donovan. Again, probably once we learn this, we would rather swap over to Drain HP. I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier, where Donovan, he's not dealing as much damage as certainly Slinik, so maybe the Drain 10% HP is not that much that he's actually going to be draining when he does that, so for that reason, degeneration, you could make more of a case for it on him than you could for Slinik. Then Mardek, you have 1 RP to spare here. This is an interesting question. We could theoretically remove Drain HP from Mardek, which is mostly defensive, of course, because it gets HP back from Mardek, and instead throw on something like critical 20%, in which case he gets a lot more damage. So that one, that's interesting. Gives us the ability to customize a little bit to the scenario. If we feel like we want as much damage as possible, then maybe we go for the crits. If we feel like we're very concerned about Mardek staying alive, and that's our first concern, then maybe the Drain HP is the way to go. Let's keep it here for the time being. Nothing physically on the defensive reactions. Same with the magic side. And then passive skills, we did somewhat recently throw on Purity, so he's roughly halfway there. We were saying the HP and MP, maybe just to make it a little bit easier to use more of his healing. The MP might help. And things like resist water, resist earth, probably not immediately relevant in here. So let's head on over to this other area. Is it this side? Yeah, it is. Okay. So, will it be dark? Will it not be dark? Take your guess, and it's dark. That means, of course, that we're not going to see anything on our mini-map unless we come across chests and or NPCs, in which case we will be able to see the dot light up on the map, and I'm assuming that, likewise with the other area, there's probably going to be hidden pathways, so I'm trying to keep a close eye out for areas where it looks like the wall gets interrupted there. Ooh, there's a blue wall. Interesting. And there's the blue switch as well. Okay, so this is where we will find that blue switch. And previously we saw one of those walls that was blocking what seemed like the main pathway, but it seems like it also unlocked something in here. As for what we're going to find, hard to say. Will this mostly just be looping us around and finding a way to get around that wall so that we can flip the switch and get on through? That might be the case. There could also be other things back here. Only 2 chests in here compared to, I think it was 4 in the previous area. So we might find that this one is a little more straightforward to navigate. Might not have quite as many things to track down, which, honestly, after the last one, I'd be okay with that. Okay, Slinik, you should be able to take out one of these guys. Probably the one with... Actually, the one that we've damaged has more HP than the one that is undamaged at this stage. Must be a higher level. Yeah, 16 versus 13. So we'll take out the one with more HP in that case. Because I think Slinik does still have more damage than Mardek. So it is fairly close, though. Okay, more phage crystals. Sure thing. And, okay, the pathway is splitting a bit here. And hard to tell which direction we will technically want to go. It seems like the place we want to go is to the right, yes, but again, it's one of those things where maybe it's looping around in the other direction just to mess with our brains. Try to trick us. I feel like this is going to be a big circle. Just a matter of which direction we want to approach it from. Okay, so these guys we actually prefer to attack with attacks rather than spells. Blind Gas, you actually did not manage to get it off with the blind itself on either people, so that's nice. I think we have a lot of people who are equipping the items that give blindness immunity. No, not Slinik, though. Carla is. That Onyx Ring is one of them. Not Donovan. Mardek is as well. Okay, so Mardek was immune. So we knew that wasn't going to happen to him. This is Slinik, though, I believe. Oh, no, it's Donovan. Sorry. Almost enough damage to take him out. Slinik, though, definitely can do that. As can Mardek. Okay, more big, creepy eyes. Lovely. Okay. There's also an NPC down here. Okay, so admittedly, I might have been mixing up the NPC in this area versus the NPC in the other area. Did we just go through this direction or not? I'm not entirely sure. Does look like this is gonna lead us to... it's this guy. Well, we saw one of them previously, and of course we'll have this little fight as we're questioning whether or not we wanted to go in that direction. But yeah, it seems like it's gonna be a very similar scenario to what we saw in the previous area. Ooh, between Charla and Donovan, they have enough damage to take out the elemental before it can take a turn. That's nice. So yeah, very similar to the last time, where we will find one of these guys. Children, you do not belong here. And again, this is, of course, the Dark Temple. So, you know, there are evil beings here. And this would definitely be one of them. So let's get rid of it. It does have that attack that deals dark damage to everyone. And there you saw that it actually healed Mardek. The number over Mardek's name, or Mardek's character, was green. Whereas Charla's, I think she took less damage considerably because she has the Onyx Amulet here. Whereas, like, someone, say, like Slinik, took 200 damage. Charla only took about 150. So, oh, and remind me, for this guy, are we going with physical attacks, magical attacks? Doesn't really matter. Theoretically, it is roughly the same. I don't remember if this guy has a reaction if we hit him with a physical attack. I don't think so. We're about to find out. The answer is no. Okay, and Mardek, I think you probably also attack yourself here. could theoretically heal, but I don't think we're desperate at this stage. Darla, I suppose you could do the healing. Sure, why not? You don't have quite as much offense. It probably makes sense to do the healing with you rather than Mardek. Parries, a dark attack. Probably is a good thing that we did heal there. I think she would have just barely held on, but it would have been close. And then Donovan again, I suppose we'll go with Flame. Well, they do have the chance to poison with their physical attacks, so maybe it is best when it's roughly even between the amount of damage we're going to do with the attacks versus the amount of damage we're going to do with the spells, to go with the attacks with Charlotte and Donovan. Either way, though, this should be enough. It is. Okay, some more Dark Essence. That's good stuff. This guy is down, and yes, just like the other area, that is where the switch was, directly behind this guy, and I think we would have found that that was where the wall was, right there. So it was basically just a shortcut that we can now take after having flipped that switch. However, it does seem like there are very likely other things in this area, like those chests. So while we're down on this side, before we head back, let's see if we can pick up, ideally both of them, of course. It does seem like this area, as we were suspecting, is much more straightforward to navigate than the other. Yes, it is, of course, still dark, but we haven't seen any hidden paths yet. Ooh, I just barely missed that. Okay. And Slinik. I think we've established that the monochromes actually can be pretty tricky to take out. Oh, and you guys were saying that the stuff that we see on this little preview here is not necessarily consistent with the actual items that the monochrome has equipped, and that it doesn't seem as though it's technically bugged. It's just a little bit unintuitive in that the ones that have a sword and a shield actually do have lower defense than the ones that have a staff. That was largely the reason why I was saying that previously, that it sounded like maybe the game was a little bit confused as to what weapon these monochromes were actually supposed to have. But anyways, let's take it out here. And then Mardek, I assume you can take this guy out. That you can. I think Slinik has mostly been taking out the elementals in the past. Good to see that Mardek can do it too. More Dark Essence. And that is Degeneration, mastered for Slinik. We were noting how we were pretty close earlier, and that does mean that we could probably get rid of it and put on something like Quarry Human, because we haven't seen any enemies with the regeneration ability in here. So if we get 2 more RP, we could throw it back on. Likewise, it's not like we've seen a lot of humans either. So I suppose at this stage, take your pick. Okay, so I'm guessing that this is where we're going to find the chest. We double back down here, maybe? Yes. It's a black hat. It's a stylish black hat that protects against the dark element somewhat. That sounds very relevant, given how most people are using dark attacks here. So it has 1 defense, which is actually a little bit lower than most of the helmets that we have right now. The Kettle Hat is 2 defense, Bronze Circlet, 1 defense, 1 magic defense, and Silver is 2 and 2. The Regal Crown that Slinik is using for the additional gold ability is 1 and 1, but also has some attributes. So at least from a pure defensive standpoint, the Black Hat is not as good. However, has minus 50% dark on magic defensive reactions. That's huge, given how many magic spells we've seen against us. I'm thinking of the Void ability with the Eye Stalks. I think the Dark Elementals as well are basically exclusively using dark spells. Even the mini-bosses that we fought. And it also gives a passive 50% dark resistance. So that is huge, make no mistake. And I think it probably makes sense to, given how Slinik is using the Regal Crown for double gold, which is mostly a luxury, it's not really something that we need to have. So we could throw it on Slinik. Especially because I don't think he has much in the way of magic defensive reactions, so it might be nice to throw on that dark one. Darla, I suppose you are done with the Silver Circlet here. And it is quite good, so we probably want to pass that over. Is Donovan done with it as well? If not, then we want to make sure he has it. Okay, now both of you have done it. So, Silver Circlet is good. The Bronze Circlet is a worse version of it, so this is, at least relative to all the helmets we've seen thus far, probably the weakest. But I think the Kettle Hat probably takes that crown from the Bronze Circlet because it's only the physical defense and doesn't also have a little bit of MP, and, I mean, people have already learned the reaction, so I guess that's not really a factor here. But this has a little bit more going for it, so I think the Kettle Hat is actually the worst. So what that means is that, well, it would be kind of nice to put the Black Hat on Mardek. Reason why I'm reluctant to just go right ahead and do that is because Mardek is currently hogging all of the dark resistance stuff. 50 dark resistance here, 50 dark resistance here, 50, 50. So if we wanted to, we could do something like that and have a character at 180% dark resistance. So at this point, Mardek would heal big time from any dark attacks. That's probably overkill. It's probably more effective to split that dark resistance a bit more amongst different people. You know, getting him up to 100% dark resist, or maybe a little bit above that so that he heals when he gets hit with dark attacks and spells, it's probably enough. And getting someone like Donovan or Charla up to 100 or just barely above 100 would probably be the next best step. Or, as we saw in that previous fight, Slick definitely took the most damage from that big dark spell that hit everyone in the party, which is almost certainly because he clearly has the lowest dark resistance by a pretty wide margin here. So I think it is most effective to put it on Slinik. However, it would be inconvenient at this stage to take off the Regal Crown when he's getting kind of close to mastering that. It's still a ways away. So maybe we don't get too attached to the Regal Crown. Could throw it on Mardek for the time being and give Slinik the opportunity here to gain a little bit more dark resistance. I think that's probably the way to go. Would mean, oh, that we have to get rid of Magic Fire, probably. Don't think that's the end of the world, like we were saying before. It's mostly going to be dark attacks and dark spells in here. Not so much on the fire side. The Monochromes can actually do it, but don't think it's too urgent. Could also theoretically be an opportunity for us to look again at the Eye Stalks in particular, and use fights with them as an opportunity to master some magic defensive reactions with everyone, because they only use magic skills. I'm going to try to double back here and find the other of the chest as well. So maybe we deliberately try to take out the Punk Monster here. And this could be one of those very opportunities. It is... I suppose Donovan does need a magic defensive reaction. I was going to say it's mostly Slinik we're trying to get here, but Donovan does as well. Mardek might have one, and I think Charla is done with all of hers. So ideally we would be at the point where everyone in the party needs one, since in that case that would mean that it doesn't matter who the Eye Stalks choose to attack. Across the board, we're benefiting. Now Slinik, you're in a bit of a tricky place here because anyone that you attack is going to go down. Could maybe use the Fire Breath. Let's heal with Charla. And then I think we'll just pass a few times, give these Eye Stalks a bit of a chance to use things like Void. And there you see now, Slinik, when he hits his reaction, is actually healing from Dark. Because after putting on the hat, he's at 60 Dark Resistance, and the Magic Defensive Reaction brings him up to 110%. So that is going to be a really big deal, I think, to have another person who is, assuming we hit our reactions, capable of completely being immune or actually slightly healing to Dark. So that will significantly limit the amount of damage that our opponents can do to us. So that's why it would be fantastic if we could get that Dark Resistance, Dark Magical Reaction mastered on, ideally, everyone. Because then it wouldn't be as much of a fight over the Black Hat. There's the miss on Donovan. That is the Magic Defensive Reaction that he's currently working on. Another thing that would be nice to get on other people too, however, it is coming from a bro, which means Carlo would be the only other person who can learn it. So this is what I did previously, outside of the video, to master up a little bit of the defensive reactions while you guys weren't looking. To expedite the process a little bit here, because we could do this for basically forever, and especially now that we have additional Dark Resistance and Dark Resistance items, it means that there isn't too much of a risk of these guys taking us out, because eventually, if they hit people like Mardek and Slinik, they're just going to get healed. People like Charla and Donovan, at this stage, Sure, they'll still take a little bit of damage, not a ton. But even when they get hit, it's not a huge deal. But the blinding gas here doesn't deal any damage no matter what, regardless of how much dark resistance you have. So that's why these guys are so good to do this against. So I'm doing this at this point mostly just to show you in practice what this is like. And it is actually fairly quick. If you compare this to how long it would take if you were to work on the reactions as you're going through in random fights and not making a deliberate point of learning these like this. But we'll end this soon. Mostly just for the sake of giving you a chance to see exactly what I was talking about before. See what it's all about. So now that we've done it, though, at least a little bit, I don't necessarily think that anyone's going to master their abilities after that. Maybe. Ooh, Sonic, you are blinded. I suppose there was always that chance that was going to happen. We can double check after this fight. But you know, you just take a few minutes to do that. Put on some music in the background. And, honestly, it's fairly quick. Donovan, okay, it does take 30 to master his one. And, oh, Charlotte did also have reactions she was working on, too. So, yeah, that was a benefit to her as well. And that was 3 for Slinik. He actually has a bunch. So, yeah, this would not be a terrible time to make a point of doing something like that. Mardek is the only one who does not currently need to work on one of his magic defensive reactions. But that's still a pretty good deal. If 3 out of 4 people are getting some benefit out of whenever they get attacked. So, trying to see if we can get this last chest here. And, again, not entirely sure where exactly we will find it, or how exactly to get to it. But maybe we've gone down here. I'm thinking this might very well be it. Yes, it is. Talisman of Shumbra, an ancient artifact. It's a holy talisman, formed personally by the deity Shumbra, the Dark God, when he made the Dark Temple. Very valuable, certainly. Okay, so that's a big pickup, I would think. And then the phages and monsters. I don't think either of these guys can use any magic skills, so it's not like this is another opportunity to do the same type of thing. We'll go back to our usual setup. So it could, theoretically, take you a little bit of time to find the right enemies to do that sort of thing. Like I was saying, in my opinion, the eye stalks are the way to do it, and there is a setup in which there will be 3 eye stalks in one battle. We ran into one where it was, what, 2 eye stalks and 1, maybe it was a monster? So ideally you'd have the 3 eye stalk setup, that way you have more enemies attacking you. It'd go a little bit faster. Mardek is faster than Slinik now that he has put on the Regal Crown, which is giving him +1 to all of his attributes. So that's why. And now, Slinik. Take out either of these guys, right? 1 with 4 HP. Slinik says, yeah, well, I'll crit to make up for it. And you guys were also saying that actually, as it turns out, when it comes to people being tied with certain attributes, because that is actually the case here. Slinik has 10 agility, whereas Mardek has 10 as well. Mardek apparently wins all tiebreakers in that regard, which is a little bit silly, because at least when it comes to agility, Mardek is quite slow to start off with. Only 9 agility is almost always going to be last. So, on this occasion, though, it does matter, because Slinik is not so speedy either. But more often than not... Ooh, I missed the reaction there. More often than not, Mardek is still going to go last, regardless of how much agility we try to put on him. Unless if we throw on that that one item that we had for Charlotte that gives, like, +10 agility, in which case... Alright, fine, Mardek. I suppose that is your way to suddenly go first. Okay, so, but also, like, how do we get out of here now? May need to go back up right past the place where we opened up that door. That might be the fastest way at this point. I don't know, the Dark Temple is confusing like that. Okay. Attacking Charla, and then Donovan, your turn to miss. Mardek take out Punk Monster. And then Slinik, get rid of this, or not get rid of this guy. Oh, he is still blinded. We probably should remove that blindness at some point. Maybe. We're just testing Slinik. See if he's up to the challenge. Okay, and then Donovan, likewise, just using the physical attacks because these phages are very resistant to magic. So, we use that. We'll take one out, and Slinik, can you get it done this time? No, you can't. Ideally, we would remove the blindness outside of battle, because then we don't need to use a turn to make it happen, but either way. Whoa, Charla. Try to deal all the damage herself. Unfortunately, at least in terms of her base amount of damage, it is going to be the lowest across the party. So, Mardek will take this guy out. And we'll try to remember to remove blindness now. Let's do that right away. There we go. Okay. So, what I'm saying is, we go back up this way. This is where we fought the mini-boss. That's where we flip the switch. Theoretically, if you really wanted to, you could unflip the switch. And there you see, yeah. That was previously a wall there. I think it was right by the way we got in here. I think it's right up here. Yes. Okay. Nice. So we're back in the main room now. And more eye stalks. So again, not necessarily the perfect setup here. Ideally, you'd have one more in this fight, but this is pretty close to what you want to have when you're working on those magic defensive reactions. So will we do it again this time? Maybe ever so briefly. And if we have these guys poisoned, then of course they're going to take a little bit of damage over time, which is going to make it a little bit harder. And we also ideally would want them to attack people other than Mardek. He's the only one that does not get anything out of those attacks. And Donovan actually has enough damage to take one of these guys out in one hit. I did not expect that. So maybe in that case we just take them both out. It's not even like Donovan crit or anything like that. Just plain and simple, had enough damage. It's growing up right before our eyes. Okay, so in that case, let's heal up a bit here. And I think we'll find that previously, there were a couple of doors blocking this area, and that is now, of course, available to us. One thing I wanted to do, though, was also check in with our party members, because I don't remember, have we talked to them yet? After having gotten into the Dark Temple? It was a while ago at this point, so let's check. I abominate this place. There's one on every world, and I hate them all. Some claim that they're necessary, these dark crystals, to maintain balance, but I've always thought that's rot. Rubbish. We don't need dark, only light. All life would be better that way. Well, I suppose that makes sense coming from the light member of the Governance to Magi. And I don't think we've seen Rohoff say that yet, so that would suggest that these probably are conversations that we just haven't had yet. So let's keep going. I'm not fond of this place. I understand that darkness is a necessary aspect of all life on Belfan, to maintain a balance, and I respect that. But I'd just rather respect it from afar, not from within its inky heart. Yeah, Donovan, sounds like you and Rohoff are on a similar page here. Carla? This place is scary. You're not wrong. You are not wrong. As for Slinik? Ooh, this sounds like a more general update from Slinik based on how it's using Slinik's own personal music here. Human, we are working together, yes. But make no mistake, I am not a fan of your ilk, and do not wish to pursue any kind of emotional bonding with you. Well, that really hurts. Am I that bad? Perhaps I should have chosen my words more carefully. It is not you for whom I hold distaste, but the idea of humans in general. You see, my species has long been in conflict with humans. To be wary and often hostile to them is our inherent nature. Some of my kind even consider you to be monsters. Thanks? That's harsh. Well, do you think I'm a monster? Not I, no. I can see that you are a skilled warrior and an honorable knight.
I have no problems with you personally. I do not wish to offend you, but nor do I wish to befriend you. Please, leave me be.
Wait, first, why is it that you hate humans anyway? What have we ever done to you?
Honestly, I cannot recall. It is one of those old, deep racial grudges that transcends mere actions and individuals. I suppose that in the olden times, our races were at war, or hunted each other, or some similar thing. I acknowledge that this is no good reason to harbor personal hatred towards you, which is why I am not hostile towards you and agreed to assist you at all. However, the grudge is deep, part of my very being and cultural identity, and hard to simply ignore. I will not pretend it is not there. For this reason, I may never feel at ease around you, but know that this does not affect how greatly I can respect you, based on your actions. Now, let us be on our way.
Interesting. So that's certainly a bit of a tension there, and we got a bit of a sense when we were in Xantusia that, yeah, the humans and the reptoids, they may not get along so well. But I think Slick may still have something to say about the Dark Temple.
There are many tales of this place amongst my people, all of them dire and baleful. We knew it was sealed off close by, but not this close. We must be very careful in here.
Yeah, that sounds right, Slick. Okay, and with that, I think this is probably a good place for us to wrap up here. And with the next episode, we'll take a look at what's through this door. It was, of course, the area where we were trying to remove those barriers previously, so does that mean there's going to be something significant on the other side? We'll just have to wait and see.